Today we're going to talk about the new Qtdc product, which is a DC power supply from Q-Tran that's made for powering any LED system that needs constant voltage. Now when you talk about LEDs, typically you have an LED fixture. They'll either need a driver that is a constant voltage driver, which merely takes a 12 or 24 volt typically DC power, and then they distribute that evenly to the fixtures, or they need a constant current style driver, which limits the amount of current that flows to the fixture. Our product is really designed to replace a constant voltage driver. So when you look at a constant voltage fixture, it basically has a current limiter on that circuit board that limits the amount of current that can flow through that LED circuit board. Now talking about the drivers themselves, when you look at a driver versus a transformer, an LED constant voltage driver is really nothing more than an electronic transformer that not only transforms the power from one voltage to another, but also takes it from an AC current to a DC current, which the LED circuit boards need to see a DC forward moving current only. So when you look at this, it has some of the same inherent problems that our typical electronic transformer has. And what those are is, number one, it's basically a high frequency device, so they can cause some noise on the lines and all because they really operate at a high frequency. Typically they're relatively inefficient compared to our toroidal transformers. Our toroids are about 95 to 97% efficient. These are typically about 85% efficient. So we have a little bit of efficiency, about 10% on this typical driver. The other challenge is when you have a job that has a large amount of LEDs on it, the contractor gets these relatively small drivers. They're limited to what is known as Class 2 output. So that Class 2 limitation is 5 amps at 12 volts, which is 60 watts, or 4 amps at 24 volts, which is roughly 96 watts or 100 watts. Class 2 is a wiring method design that is safe from the risk of shock and safe from the risk of fire. So when you do that, if a contractor has a larger load of LEDs, say on a casino or something like that, he ends up getting multiple drivers that he has to figure out a way of mounting. Typically when a driver ships, unlike a ballast in a fixture, the driver ships just like this. So the contractor has the responsibility of finding an enclosure, buying terminal strips, and creating his own enclosure in the field to hold these multiple drivers he may have. Now, with our system, we do a self-contained unit in our QTM housing, and we do a toroid anywhere from 60 watts up through 600 watts. So basically a contractor gets a driver system that's all self-contained. So on a typical 24 volt system, if you remember the limitation is 100 watts, we can do 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, or 600. We still wire the transformer to Class 2 style outputs. So we put multiple breakers, which you can't really see, but they're back here. So each one of those outputs of 100 watts each is limited to 4 amps at 24 volts, thus meeting the Class 2 requirement for that limitation on the secondary side. The bigger benefit is, instead of the contractor getting those 6 drivers and trying to figure out how to mount them, it's all here self-contained. The second side of the story is, with that electronic transformer, the typical life for an electronic transformer is about 5 years. It has to do with the way they're made. They're an electrical component. Also, the efficiency causes them to have some excessive heat buildup. When you put them in an enclosure, that heat increases as well. So all those things will shorten the life of that driver. Ideal conditions, that driver typically lasts about 5 years. If you look at the power supply for your laptop or something like that, that is the same type of device. It's a little transformer that's converting AC, high voltage AC to low voltage DC power. And as you find when you buy a laptop, typically 2 years into it, you need to replace that transformer. The same with an LED driver. So if you have an LED fixture that's designed to last 15, 20 years, you may replace that driver 2, 3, 5 times over the lifetime of that LED. Our toroids, because of the efficiency, the way we design them, they're made to last 25 or 30 years, and really we give you a 10-year warranty on the system itself. So they're really designed to last as long or outlast the LEDs themselves. From an environmental standpoint, the typical LED driver that's electronic has no recyclable qualities to it, where our units are completely recyclable, all made of copper and steel. So probably 90% or more of this unit here, when it's done and then it's end of life, is recyclable as well. Now the next challenge in LEDs is controlling them. With a typical LED driver, you need to use what's called 0 to 10 volt dimming, which is an antiquated dimming system that it's an analog system, not very reliable. Typically you get very little control for the first volt and a half and the last volt and a half on that 10 volt range. And what that causes is you get some infrequencies in the dimming itself. It's not very consistent. The other issue is most dimming systems, if you look at a Qtran system or a Vantage system or any architectural dimming system, it's very challenging for them to interface with that 0 to 10 volt dimming system. You can do it, but typically you need an interface or two to make that all work together. One of the beauties of our product is with a typical magnetic low voltage dimmer, probably $40 at your local wholesale house, you can control these LEDs not only on and off, but you can dim the lights up and down. So it's a very simple control if you need that. If you need to tie it into a system, be it a Qtran system or whoever, as long as that module is rated for magnetic low voltage, which is an inductive load, you can dim these lights up and down. Now the LEDs themselves, unfortunately, every manufacturer makes them slightly different. Some are very stable when you dim them. Some of them become a little unstable when you dim them. With this one here, it dims relatively nicely down to probably about 5% or less output. So we suggest that you try it out and make sure that it works with the LED so it dims to not only the light level, but also the light quality that you expect from that LED. So in conclusion, you get a pre-wired system on your job, you get something that's more energy efficient, you get something that's more long-lasting, and along with that, it's absolutely silent, so you never have a noise issue as well, and very easily controlled.
Could you mention that the dimmers do not come with the units?
Dimmer by others.